It's time now for Talk of the Bay on K-Squid. I'm your host, Rachel Ann Goodman. Thanks for joining me this evening. It's quite an honor to have my guest for this first half of the program. Gitta Ryle is a survivor of the Holocaust. She is a Santa Cruz County resident, and she recently celebrated her 92nd birthday. Is that correct?
April.
It will be 92 in April. Well, happy birthday in advance, and thank you for making the time to come in today.
Thank you.
When you were a child in Vienna, Vienna was really a progressive place before the war, before World War II, wasn't it? And then everything changed. You got sent away from your childhood, basically, when you were 7.
Yes.
What was your thought when everything changed? Did you know why things were changing in your world? You're Jewish. You had a Jewish family.
Mm-hmm.
You were aware of being Jewish, I assume.
Yeah. Well, think about a child being 7 and what that mentality is. Now, I went to the temple with my dad, and I knew a little bit, but I don't know if I really had the concept of what Jewishness and religion was, okay? So, what can I say? I understood very little when can I continue with when the Nazis came in and took over Vienna, Austria, and we had to, I don't know if you didn't see, I have a passport. I didn't bring it, but we can't show anyway. But I have a swastika passport when they came in, and it shows, that I'm Jewish.
There was a big J on it, wasn't there?
Yeah, a red J. And then, chaos kind of, but I didn't understand. I don't know how much my sister understood. She was 3 years older. And the next thing we hear is that, some of the Jews wanted to get out. And because my mom's parents were still alive in Vienna, and my dad had left, he was going to come back to get us, but that's another story. Anyway, so she made a decision to send us with an organization to France to save our lives.
So she knew you were in danger of...
Yes. I didn't understand what danger was. All I know was I had a lot of fear, and I was angry. I was a little angry girl because why would my mother send me away, And I didn't see my dad, and so that, as a child, the things that you feel is that I felt was I must have done something wrong. I must not be a good girl. I had to hide when anybody knocked on the door because I looked Jewish. I didn't know what that meant. So there was a lot of negativity as a little girl that I picked up that I'm not good. So that was pretty solid for the first few years. I must say, though, that before the Nazis came into Vienna, I had a very loving mother and father, sister, and me. There were 4 of us. And I was adored by my dad and mom. And I think that beginning of having that foundation helped me as an adult. But the shift was so strong that for a long time, I was very negative and very angry and didn't want to live.
And you saw Hitler driving through the streets as a child.
He was when he came in, he was on this car and at the big aisle. And my mother and sister and I, we were going to that organization that was going to send us to France. And so we were stuck on the main road, and she said, just do what everybody else does, just do Heil so that nobody suspects us. And again, I had no idea who in the heck he was, at the time. But all I know is that everybody was nervous and everybody was scared, and so that's all I understood then. Yeah.
So this organization that helped you escape Vienna for what would have been, possibly deportation to one of the camps, what was this organization? They were saving only children at that point, sending them to France?
Well, there's two, actually. There was the Kindertransport that took children to England. That was full. So when my mother applied for us, it was the French. The Rothschilds put money together and all that. And so it was called Œuvre au secours des enfants, Help to Save the Children. So they're Jewish kids from Germany and Austria. We were all put on a train from, when Mother took us there, and we didn't know anybody.
Just you, 7 years old, and your 10-year-old sister. By yourself on a train. You didn't know where you were going.
No, we didn't understand why we were even going. But my parents told Renee that she was in charge of me now, never to leave me out of her sight. And she didn't. But one time. But that's another story.
So you get sent on this train, and where was your first destination?
Well, we landed in Paris, and there we were told that they distributed the kids in different places, and the first place we went was outside of Paris at called Montmorency, and it was a villa that was owned by the Rothschild family. And they made that into a children's home. And that first one was okay because they tried to tell us that this is not going to last, the war is going to be over, which I didn't know what a war was even, but it's going to be over and you'll be back with your parents. And they really had people come from Paris on the weekend to make us Jewish families to meet us, and we performed for them and all that stuff. And it was, the food was okay. It really was more like camp,
Where was your mother and father at this time?
Well, my dad had left with other men for Belgium to try and bring us over there. He didn't realize that things got worse, And so he was out of the picture, and my mother wanted to stay. She had two siblings that left for America because we had cousins that came before the war. And she just couldn't leave. She said, my parents are still here. So her decision was to send us with the Osé.
Your father did eventually track you down as you're being moved around France, trying to avoid the Nazis. You were basically being hidden in different places around France as time went on. He risked his life to come see you, didn't he? Can you tell how that happened?
I feel very sad that, as a little girl, I thought that my parents must not love me because they sent me away, because that's all I understood. And as an adult, to understand and know how much they loved me, and that they would do anything. In fact, I feel that my parents gave their lives to us. They suffered so much. My dad by being killed in Auschwitz, and my mother died of a heart attack after she had 7 years without us, not knowing. She only got letters from the Osé that we were okay, but we never were in touch with her. So we didn't.
7 years. So the next time you saw her, you were 14, and you had left her at 7.
Yeah.
And your father, he actually joined the French resistance just to go to visit you, didn't he? That's an amazing story. He snuck back into the country even at his own risk.
Yeah, and no car, no bike, no nothing. He must have walked Because when we saw him, he was very tan and pure white hair. I never forget that image.
You think his hair turned white from the sun or from fear?
Well, could
maybe
also
just
be
got
age,
older. Yeah.
but no, I don't know. That's another. There's so many sad things that I'll never know.
And also, you never got to see him again after that. You knew what
No.
happened only by looking back at the records. Is that correct?
Yeah. My son did a lot of checking, and my nephew is doing a lot of ancestry stuff. And we found letters that my mom and dad did correspond with each other. And there was a letter that was his last letter when he knew he was going to be sent off. So there's a lot of sad things about that. But I learned through therapy that you don't ask why. There is no why. Life is a happening. We're here for whatever time, for whatever experience. It's a journey. And I can make peace with myself for understanding that. And that now I'm content and at peace that I had nothing to do with this situation. I blamed myself, but that was not real. But anyway, that was what a child does.
Well, you said that the first time you realized you were really in a war was when you saw dead bodies and you wanted to die. Like you felt personally...
Yes.
Like you didn't want to be in that world once you saw the worst part of it.
To watch people kill each other, I thought, what society, what human beings are these? That the bombs are falling, they're shooting down from the planes, and then they're across the highway, they're killing each other. So, yeah, I was very clear that I didn't want to live. But I didn't have whatever it took to kill myself. I wanted someone to kill me. And we were close a couple times. We thought the Germans were going to shoot into where we were hiding, but they didn't. So why? You don't ask why.
But you're here telling your story, and you've said you found a why, in that you could share what happened to you in the hopes that we'd learn something.
I have a purpose, not a why. I have a purpose.
How do you define that purpose? Like, how do you articulate it for yourself or for others?
Well, first of all, it's word of mouth. People heard my story. I've been doing it for over 28 years. And at first, I never spoke in public. So for me, I wanted to learn to tell my truth, and that's what I do. I can't tell anybody else's truth, but my truth. So that's how I started talking, and the purpose is that I was a child during World War II and the Holocaust. I was not in a camp. I survived as a child running ahead and sometimes under the Germans, but they didn't get me. So I am a witness that it happened. So whenever I talk, I just say, I'm making you my ambassadors. Any person that meets me, if in the future somebody says, oh, it never happened, it's just a story, they are my ambassadors and say, no, I met someone who actually lived through it, and it did happen. So the purpose is that the history never dies. That's the number one. And then, because of the therapy that I've done, I have come to some information for me, for healing, that I share. And, I always say, if people hear me talking, if they like what I say, great. If they don't like what I say, it's okay too, because it's my truth. It's not anybody else's. And so if something resonates that makes sense to them, great. So I don't know what else to say. I'm just a human being that's still living, and grateful that through therapy, and I must give that credit, I worked many years I don't know if you know when I started therapy, but it was when my first two children were the age that I was when Renee and I were taken away, and I got ulcers and anxiety attacks, and they were terrible. And so the doctor said, you have to go and talk to someone. And I had never talked about anything. So I was in my 40s, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. So then I started. And I'm still learning every day. I'm open to whatever comes, to me. And, yeah.
I'm speaking with Gitta Ryle. And Gitta, I wanted to ask you we're in the present moment. There's two wars going, at least two wars. There's many more. There's a lot of war happening.
Yes.
You were the witness to war yourself. How do you respond when some people articulate this equivalence between what Israel's doing in Gaza and what Hitler did to the Jews? How do you deal with people who say those things?
Well, I've been asked a lot about that. It's a difficult place for me to be because I am trying to stay neutral. I know what's going on in Israel, and I'm very, very sad that this is happening. But I also know that there's nothing in my power that I can do to change it. They have to do it. But what I can do here is to promote peace, hope, and not hold on to negativity and fear. I think fear is a disease.
It seems to be spreading, though, lately.
Yes.
And there is a rise in fascism, not just in other countries in Europe, Poland and places like that, but in the United States, openly, there's people marching through Charlottesville saying Jews will not replace us. How do we deal with that situation, the rise? How do you see that as a Holocaust survivor when you see these news clips?
I don't like it at all. I think that it's horrible. I am amazed that I have not met anyone with all my talks that has talked to me personally. And I would like to. I'll tell you, if you know someone that doesn't believe that the Holocaust happened, I just would like to talk to them and ask them where they got that information. Because it is where you got your basic, I know I sound like a record for people who are listening to me, but I know that the things that we've learned from childhood, the beliefs and the behavior and the knowledge is all learned. It's not inherited. But people hang on to that stuff, and then they think that's the way they have to be, negative, angry, fearful. And it's sad because I don't have that anymore, and I will never have it again. Doesn't matter. Someone said, aren't you afraid that someone's going to come to your house? You have too much Jewish stuff showing out. And I said, well, why would I fear something that may not happen? So if somebody comes and does something to me, I'll deal with it. So I see this so clearly. And when other people don't see it, I don't understand. Because it seems so simple. Fear is a negative. It's very sad. So I try and stay, I do some meditation, I do breathing, I do what it takes to keep my mind and body in a place where I can live and not just exist. Because so many years I just existed. I hope I answered your question. I know it's a difficult one, but I feel like when there is nothing in our power that we can do, what can we do that is in our power? And what I do, I hope, by spreading positiveness and hope for peace and like I want this negativity in people to be balanced with good stuff. So to hear There's always the yin and the yang. There's always good and bad. And if we can balance that, I think we'll be less fearful. I don't know. I would hope so.
Sometimes you read about individual stories of great bravery that give you inspiration.
Yes.
And I know there were many stories during the Holocaust of people who did not succumb to fear. And sometimes it cost them their lives, but they were heroes under the worst of conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure those stories probably give you a lot of strength just to read about them. We often hear, about other things like generational trauma, how we're carrying this story as Jews. Even if we weren't there, it's still part of our history. But then on this other side, there are these stories of individuals who, against all odds, survived the worst of conditions because they either were lucky or they had the will or they were just brave, right? I wonder if you take those stories with you as well when you hear about them, the bravery that was involved, or the people who hid you were doing it.
Yes.
They could have been killed for what they did.
Exactly. And we're doing a documentary of my life.
Who's doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Who's filming it? Anybody local?
Well, it's not done yet, so we're not going to talk about it.
You'll tell me later, and we'll announce.
But what the essence of this is not a Holocaust story. What it is a child trauma, but then looking at all the people from the beginning that did not tell people we were Jewish, and all along, and those are my heroes. So I have a whole lot of them, and that was our travel to do that. And
you lived with a farm family, right? That was pretending that you were their child. They could have been killed for doing that.
Oh, and if we were found out, they would be traitors.
Yeah.
They would all get killed. So these people are heroes, and we're trying to make that the essence of the documentary, because that hasn't been said enough. But again, that's a positive. It's
we all need to learn how to be heroes, and I think now especially there's opportunities for people to be brave or to kowtow to their fear, and this is the choice people are making every day here in the United States, whether to stand up and say something or be silent. Whether to be a hero or to
we have to risk to say something.
Yeah.
And, life is supposed to be lived. And if you're silent and you're fearful and angry and all that, you're just there.
You're giving up your power in a way, in a big way, when you decide to be silent. You're silencing yourself, right? It's part of it. I'm excited to have you here, and we only have about 5 more minutes. So I was wondering if you had any other things you'd like to share. You actually made it to the United States.
Yes.
And you ended up in Michigan, then in Detroit, and then you came to L.A. and then to Santa Cruz.
Yes.
How did you end up in Santa Cruz?
Well, it was my husband got us a position here to design a new computer on the west side. And so he came up and worked, and then he bought me a house and said, come on up. And I still had my children that were adults in L.A., so I just came up, but I didn't like it at first because I missed my kids. But now you can't take me away. I love the area. I love the feeling. Naturally, we couldn't have any better clean air and all that stuff. I mean, nothing.
And you love the symphony. You said
nothing is perfect.
Of course,
but this is a paradise. This for me.
And Gitta, I'm so happy that you did choose to make this your home. That way, we got to meet. And what you were telling me before we went on the air, I wanted to have you share, because you're modest about it, but you take low-income kids to the symphony and they get to meet the conductor.
Yeah,
I think that's a cool thing that you do.
Well, it's just that my heart is for children. And I guess this is because of some of the childhood that I didn't maybe have. I don't know. I don't try to analyze it. All I know is that there are children in need, and I feel good that I can support it. But, there's a lot of things that If you wanted to know about this forgiving and forgiveness, did we talk about that? We may not have time.
We only have 2 minutes, but go for it.
Well, it's just that I learned through my therapy that forgiving someone is not my thing. My understanding of forgiving is forgiving myself for holding on to negativity that someone caused me to have, and I give it back to the perpetrators so they own it. The Nazi owned what they did. I don't own that they killed everybody and stuff. So this is a freeing of me, of understanding. So everybody has different views of forgiving, but I like the idea that I found mine that is very comfortable. So if I have any negativity in my life, people that try to do bad things to me, that's what I do. I just give it back to them, and that's good. And I just, the main thing is love yourself. And if you're good to yourself, you're good to other people.
Thank you for being here on K-Squid. Gitta Ryle, my guest on Talk of the Bay. It's been a pleasure. And if you want to see a longer slideshow and talk, it's online on YouTube. Just look up Gitta Ryle. It's Gitta Ryle. And if you look at Temple Bethel's YouTube channel, it's there as well. They presented along with the library a beautiful talk for a Holocaust Remembrance Day on January 27th. So if you'd like to watch that, go check it out. And thank you so much for being here. It's been my pleasure. This is Talk of the Bay. We're going to have a short few announcements and welcome Chris Neely. So stay tuned. This is K-Squid. I'm Rachel Ann Goodman.